The bright lights of Seoul shone against the night sky as Tae-ho Kim walked home. His steps were light and quick. He had just won the biggest gaming tournament of his career. The memory of his victory made him smile as he moved through the quiet streets. National champion, he whispered to himself, still not quite believing it. At 28, Tae-ho was considered old for a professional gamer. Many of his competitors were barely out of high school. But tonight, he had proven that experience could beat youth. His fingers moved in his jacket pocket, still going through the motions of his winning combo. The street was empty this late at night. Tae-ho checked his watch. It was past midnight. His apartment was still 15 minutes away. He thought about calling a taxi, but decided he needed the walk to calm his racing mind. That's when it happened. A bright light appeared above him, washing the street in a blue-white glow. At first, Tae-ho thought it might be a police helicopter. But the light was too steady, too intense, and there was no sound. "What is—" he began to say, but his words cut off as the light grew brighter. Tae-ho felt his feet leave the ground. His body rose slowly into the air. He tried to scream, but no sound came out. His limbs wouldn't move. All he could do was stare upward as he floated toward the source of the light. The last thing he saw before losing consciousness was the underbelly of an enormous disc-shaped object hovering silently above the city. When Tae-ho opened his eyes, he knew immediately that something was very wrong. The ceiling above him was not the familiar off-white of his apartment. It was a perfect gleaming white that seemed to glow from within. He tried to sit up and found that he could move again. He was lying on a flat surface in the middle of a circular room. The walls were the same glowing white as the ceiling, but covered with strange symbols that shifted and changed as he watched them. They reminded him of the loading screens in some of his favorite games. "Subject is conscious," a voice said. The words were Korean, but the voice was unlike anything Tae-ho had ever heard. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Tae-ho sat up fully and saw that one wall of the room was actually transparent, like glass. On the other side stood 3 figures. They were clearly not human. Each one stood about 7 feet tall, with slender bodies covered in smooth, blue-tinted skin that reflected the room's light. Their heads were slightly too large for their bodies, with no hair and enormous almond-shaped eyes that blinked sideways. They wore identical outfits that looked like bodysuits made of some metallic material, each with a different glowing symbol on the chest. "Where am I?" Tae-ho asked, surprised that his voice worked normally. "Who are you?" The tallest of the 3 aliens stepped closer to the transparent wall. "You are aboard the research vessel Nox 7, it said. "I am Captain Do-san of the Kuldar Imperium. These are my research officers, Ki-tae and Sunmi." Tae-ho blinked in confusion. "You have Korean names?" "We do not," the alien replied. "Your brain is translating our identifiers into concepts you can understand." Tae-ho nodded slowly. This was far from the strangest part of his situation. He took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. Panicking wouldn't help. "Why am I here?" he asked. Captain Do-san turned to the others. The human displays remarkable composure. Most subjects show extreme distress upon first contact. The one identified as Ki-tae made a note on a floating screen that appeared in front of him. Subject exhibits unusual stress response, possibly related to his occupation. "You know what I do for a living?" Tae-ho asked. Sunmi stepped forward. "We have been studying your species for some time. Our records show you are a professional gamer. You compete in virtual combat simulations for status and resources." Tae-ho almost laughed despite the situation. "That's one way to put it. But you didn't answer my question. Why am I here?" Do-san's large eyes blinked slowly. "Humans are an anomaly in our galactic survey. Physically, you are weaker than most intelligent species. Your lifespans are short. Your technology is primitive, yet you have dominated your planet and are beginning to explore beyond it." Ki-tae continued. "The Kuldar Imperium requires data on human resilience before deciding Earth's status. Will you be allies, subjects, or threats?" "And I'm your test subject," Tae-ho said, understanding dawning on him. "Correct," Sunmi replied. You will undergo a series of pain tolerance assessments. Instead of the fear they clearly expected, Taeho felt something unexpected: curiosity. As he looked around the room more carefully, he noticed that the changing symbols on the walls formed patterns. The room's layout reminded him of the virtual reality chambers he had trained in for competitions. "So, you're going to torture me to see how tough humans are?" Taeho asked, his mind already shifting into the focused state he entered during difficult gaming challenges. "Torture implies punishment," Dosan corrected. "This is scientific assessment, but yes, there will be pain. How you endure it will help determine your species' fate." Taeho stood up slowly, stretching his arms and legs. He was surprised to find he felt physically fine. In fact, he felt better than he had before the abduction, more alert and energized. "Begin. Primary assessment protocol," Dosan ordered. The room began to change. The flat surface Taeho had been lying on sank into the floor. The walls shifted color, becoming darker. The symbols moved faster, pulsing with red light. Most people would have been terrified. But Taeho had spent thousands of hours in virtual worlds where the environment could change in an instant, where danger could appear from anywhere. His mind automatically began to categorize what he was seeing, looking for patterns and rules. "This feels like the start of a new game," he muttered to himself. Behind the transparent wall, the aliens watched with increasing interest as Taeho began to pace the room, examining everything with careful attention. He wasn't cowering or begging for release. He was analyzing. "Interesting response," Kite noted. "Subject appears to be treating the situation as a challenge rather than a threat." Sunmi's head tilted slightly. His neural patterns show increased focus and problem-solving activity, rather than fear response. Dosan moved closer to the barrier, studying Taeho intensely. "Let us see how long that lasts when the real pain begins." Inside the chamber, Taeho heard a low humming sound starting to build. The air began to tingle against his skin. Something was coming. But instead of dread, he felt the familiar rush of adrenaline he experienced at the start of every tournament match. His lips curved into a small smile as he whispered to himself, "Game on." The aliens had no way of knowing they had just made a crucial mistake. They had taken a human who had spent his entire life turning challenges into games, who had trained himself to find patterns in chaos, who thrived under pressure. They thought they were testing a human's endurance for pain, but Taeho was already playing to win. The chamber hummed with energy as the walls pulsed with red light. Taeho stood in the center, his feet planted firmly, his eyes alert and scanning for what might come next. "Beginning sensory assessment protocol," Captain Dosan announced from behind the transparent wall. Suddenly, the gravity in the room shifted. Taeho felt himself become lighter, then heavier, then sideways. His body was pulled in unpredictable directions. Most people would have panicked, flailing helplessly as their sense of up and down was destroyed. But Taeho had spent countless hours playing zero-gravity combat simulators. Just like Zero-G Combat Championship finals, he muttered to himself, a small smile forming on his lips. He remembered the techniques he had mastered in the game, how to control his movements when gravity was unreliable, how to predict the next shift. As the gravity pulled him toward what had been the ceiling, Taeho bent his knees slightly and rolled with the movement. When it shifted again, he was ready, adjusting his body to land gracefully on what was now the floor. Behind the observation wall, Kaitai watched with growing confusion. "The subject is adapting. Increase disorientation level," ordered Dosan. Turkey. Gravity shifts became faster, more erratic. At the same time, pinpricks of pain began to appear randomly across Taeho's body, sharp, burning sensations designed to break his concentration and induce panic. The first jolt of pain caught Taeho by surprise. It felt like being stabbed with a hot needle on his left arm. He let out a small gasp. "Pain stimulus initiated," Sunmi noted. "First reaction recorded." But instead of descending into fear, Taeho narrowed his eyes and began to focus more intensely. The pain came again, this time on his right leg, then his back, then his shoulder. There's a pattern, Teho realized after the 7th or 8th jolt. The pain seemed random, but nothing in games was ever truly random. There was always a code, an algorithm, a pattern to be found if you paid close enough attention. After a few more jolts, he confirmed his theory. The pain followed a sequence, left to right, top to bottom. Once he understood this, he could predict where the next pain would come and mentally prepare for it. The gravity shifts also had a pattern. They cycled through 6 different directions, with varying intensities but in a fixed order. Teho began to move in rhythm with the shifts, almost like dancing through the chamber. Subjects' stress hormones are not elevating as expected, Sunmi reported, her voice betraying her confusion. Instead, we're seeing dopamine spikes. Dopamine? Dosan moved closer to the display. That is associated with pleasure in humans. He appears to be enjoying this, Kite said in disbelief. In the chamber, Teho had begun to keep a mental score. Every time he correctly predicted a gravity shift or pain location, he awarded himself points. Every time one caught him by surprise, he deducted points. It was a scoring system he created on the fly, turning the torture into a game. Level 1 clear, he said to himself after mastering the initial patterns. He knew the aliens were watching, analyzing. In his mind, they were simply the game designers, and he was the player finding ways to beat their system. Dusan leaned toward a control panel. Advance to Level 2 assessment. Inside the chamber, the lights suddenly went out. Complete darkness surrounded Teho. The gravity stabilized, but the floor beneath his feet began to move, sections rising and falling unpredictably. The pain stimuli continued, but now they were stronger and their pattern had changed. Vision impairment added, Sunmi noted. Physical balance challenge initiated. Most humans would have been reduced to crawling, desperate to find stable ground, in the darkness. But Teho had trained himself to play complex games blindfolded as part of his practice regimen. He closed his eyes, they were useless anyway, and focused entirely on the sensations in his feet and body. The floor pieces have a rhythm, he realized after a minute of careful attention. Some sections rose quickly, others slowly. Some stayed, up longer than others. By focusing intensely, he could feel subtle vibrations that predicted which section would move next. Teho began to move confidently through the darkness, stepping smoothly from one section to another, avoiding the areas about to rise or fall. When pain came, he acknowledged it but didn't let it break his concentration. Remarkable, Kite whispered. He's navigating by feel alone. How is this possible? Dosan demanded. The human should be disoriented and in distress. Sunmi studied the biometric readings closely. His brain activity suggests he's treating this as a puzzle to be solved rather than a threat to be feared. Inside the chamber, Teho had started laughing. Each time he successfully navigated a difficult sequence of floor movements, he felt the same rush of triumph he experienced during his gaming tournaments. Level up, he shouted into the darkness after a particularly challenging sequence. The aliens exchanged bewildered looks. Did he just say, level up? Kite asked. Increase to maximum intensity, Dosan ordered, his voice tight with frustration. The chamber suddenly blazed with strobing lights, painfully bright after the darkness. The gravity began shifting violently in completely random patterns. The pain stimuli increased in intensity and frequency, coming from all directions without any discernible pattern. For the first time, Teho felt genuinely challenged. He stumbled, fell, and grunted in pain as he was thrown against the walls and jolted with burning sensations throughout his body. Finally, Dosan said, watching the human struggle. We've reached his limit. But then something unexpected happened. Instead of breaking down, Teho began to laugh harder. He picked himself up after each fall, his eyes bright with excitement. This is just like the chaos level in Ultimate Combat Simulator, he shouted. The one nobody could beat but me. He began to move differently, not trying to predict the unpredictable but instead flowing with it, using each shift in gravity to propel himself in useful directions, rolling with impacts to minimize pain, finding moments of stability in the midst of chaos. What is happening? Dosan demanded. His endorphin levels are rising. The pain should be unbearable. Sunmi's eyes were wide with fascination. I believe he's having fun. Impossible, Kite exclaimed. No subject has ever enjoyed the sensory chamber before. In the chamber, Taeho had found his rhythm. The randomness itself became a pattern once he stopped fighting it. He moved like a dancer through the shifting gravity, accepting the pain as simply another game mechanic to overcome. When the aliens finally shut down the chamber nearly an hour later, Taeho was still on his feet. He was breathing hard, sweating, and his body ached from the torture, but his eyes were bright and alert. He looked directly at the transparent wall where the three aliens stood watching him. That was a great warm-up, he called out. When does the real challenge start? Dosan turned to his colleagues, his expression unreadable. Prepare the psychological trial chamber. This human is different. As they led Taeho to the next chamber, he felt a growing sense of excitement. Whatever these aliens had planned, it was turning out to be the most immersive game he had ever played. And Taeho Kim had never lost a game he set his mind to winning. Ready for level 2, he whispered to himself, as the door to the next chamber hissed open. Taeho was led down a long, curved hallway by unseen forces. He wasn't bound, but an invisible field pushed him forward gently but firmly. The three aliens, Dosan, Kite, and Sunmi, walked behind a transparent barrier alongside him, studying his every move. The physical trials yielded unexpected results, Dosan said. The psychological chamber will surely break him. Taeho heard them clearly. The fact that they discussed their plans openly suggested they were confident he couldn't escape. Or perhaps they wanted him to hear, to feel fear about what was coming next. Psychological chamber, Taeho repeated to himself. His mind immediately jumped to the horror games he had mastered over the years. Games designed to create fear, to make players feel helpless and trapped. But even the scariest games had rules, patterns, and solutions. The hallway ended at a circular door that spiraled open. Inside was a simple white room with nothing but a single chair in the center. Please sit, Sunmi instructed. Taeho examined the chair carefully before sitting down. It looked normal enough, though made of some smooth material he couldn't identify. We will now scan your mind, Kite explained. The process is not painful, but you may feel a slight tingling sensation. A soft humming filled the room. Taeho felt a strange vibration pass through his head, like gentle fingers sifting through his thoughts. Images flashed through his mind. Memories of his childhood, his gaming career, his fears and hopes. Scan complete, Dosan announced, preparing psychological simulation based on subjects' fear responses. The white room began to change. The walls, floor, and ceiling seemed to melt away, revealing a vast open space. Taeho found himself standing on what appeared to be a glass platform, suspended thousands of feet in the air. Far below, he could see the tiny shapes of cars and people. A cold wind whipped around him. The glass platform was completely transparent, creating the illusion that he was standing on nothing at all, and then slowly, a crack appeared beneath his feet. Then another, and another. Taeho felt his heart rate increase. He had always been afraid of heights, but even as the fear response kicked in, another part of his brain activated. The part that had played countless virtual reality games with similar scenarios. This isn't real, he reminded himself. It's a simulation based on my fears, like the nightmare level in Dream Crawler. Around the edges of the glass platform, familiar faces began to appear. His parents looking disappointed, his gaming rivals laughing at him, fans turning away in disgust. The platform continued to crack beneath his feet as these figures circled him. You failed, his father's voice said, though his lips weren't moving. You wasted your life on games. Washed up, a rival gamer taunted. One lucky win doesn't change that you're finished. The crack spread further across the glass. Taeho could now hear it creaking, ready to shatter completely. Behind their observation screen, the aliens watched intently. Heart rate elevated, Kite noted with satisfaction. Stress hormones increasing. The fear simulation is working. His worst fears appear to be failure, heights, and public rejection, Sunmi observed. The combination should be overwhelming. Back in the simulation, Taeho closed his eyes. He took a deep breath. Then another. The voices continued around him, growing louder, more cruel. The glass cracked further. But instead of panicking, Taeho began to speak to himself in a calm, focused voice. This is just another game. Games have rules. Find the rules, find the solution. He opened his eyes and began to carefully study his surroundings. The simulation was impressive, but now that he was looking for them, he could see small glitches. A bird in the distance that repeated the same flight pattern. A cloud that moved in a perfect circle. The faces of the people around him occasionally flickering. All simulations have boundaries, Taeho whispered. He moved carefully across the cracking glass, testing each step. He noticed that no matter where he stepped, the cracks always formed, in the same pattern. It wasn't responding to his actual weight or position, it was following a script. Look how he's analyzing the environment, Sunmi said with surprise. He's treating it like a puzzle instead of responding to the emotional stimuli. Dosan leaned forward. Increase the fear factors. Add the falling sensation. The glass beneath Taeho's feet suddenly shattered completely. He began to fall through the air, wind rushing past him. The ground far below raced toward him. Most humans would have screamed, flailed, been consumed by terror. But Taeho spread his arms and legs into a skydiving position, just as he would in a virtual reality game. He had played falling simulators before. He knew how they worked. As he fell, he noticed something interesting. Certain areas of the air around him had a slightly different color, almost imperceptible unless you were looking for it. He had seen similar visual artifacts in poorly rendered game environments. There, he thought, spotting a particularly noticeable glitch in the air to his right. He maneuvered his body toward it, pushing against the air currents. What is he doing? Kaite asked. He should be paralyzed with fear. He's moving toward the simulation boundary, Sunmi realized. How could he possibly know it's there? Taeho reached the glitched area and pressed his hand against it. The air seemed to ripple, like touching the surface of water. He pushed harder, and suddenly his hand passed through. He's found a flaw in our simulation matrix, Dosan said, alarm evident in his voice. With a final push, Taeho forced his entire body through the boundary. The falling sensation stopped immediately. The world around him flickered and revealed glimpses of the actual white room before the simulation struggled to rebuild itself. In that moment of weakness, Taeho spotted the source of the projection. Small, devices embedded in the corners of the room. He quickly moved toward the nearest one and placed his hand over it, blocking its projection. Part of the simulation collapsed. The voices went silent. Half the illusion remained, but it was unstable, full of visual errors and glitches. Impossible, Dosan whispered. He's hacking our simulation technology. Taeho moved quickly from one projection device to another, covering each one. With each device he blocked, more of the simulation fell away. Finally, he had disabled enough of them that the entire illusion collapsed. He found himself back in the white room, standing next to the chair. He looked directly at the observation window where the three aliens stood watching him, their expressions a mixture of shock and fascination. Your graphics are impressive, Taeho called out to them, but the physics engine needs work. The boundary collision detection was way too obvious. He talks about it as if it were a game, Kite said. To him it is, Sunmi replied. Her voice held a new tone, something like respect. Dosan was quiet for a long moment before speaking. I believe we need to reconsider our approach. This human's mind works differently than our models predicted. Taeho sat back down in the chair, waiting calmly for whatever came next. He was now certain that no matter what these aliens threw at him, he could handle it. After all, he had spent his entire life training for exactly this: finding patterns, solving puzzles, overcoming seemingly impossible challenges. What's the next level? He called out, a confident smile on his face. The aliens exchanged glances. "Prepare the combat trial," Dosan ordered. "Let us see how he handles a true physical threat." As Taiho was led to the next chamber, he felt more alive than he had in years. This strange alien abduction had become the ultimate game, and he was determined to beat every level. The door to the next chamber slid open with a soft hiss. Taiho walked in confidently, curious about what challenge awaited him. The room was much larger than the previous ones, resembling a vast arena with high walls and a domed ceiling. Captain Dosan's voice came through hidden speakers. "Human specimen, you have shown unexpected abilities in our previous tests. Now we will assess your physical capabilities." Taiho looked around the empty arena. "Bring it on," he said, stretching his arms and legs. He was tired but energized by his successes so far. Behind their observation screen, the three aliens watched. "Humans have relatively weak bodies compared to many species," Dosan reminded his team. "His mental tricks cannot overcome physical limitations." Kite nodded. "The temperature trial will begin the process." In the arena, Taiho felt the air suddenly grow cold. The temperature dropped rapidly, and within minutes his breath came out in white clouds. His fingers began to feel numb, and shivers ran through his body. "Temperature endurance test initiated," Sunmi announced. "Starting at 0 degrees Celsius and decreasing. Most humans would have huddled in place, trying to conserve body heat. But Taiho began to move, jogging in circles around the arena. "He's generating heat through movement," Kite observed. "A basic survival technique," Dosan replied, unimpressed. "Let's see how he handles extreme heat." The cold vanished almost instantly. The air in the room began to heat up, quickly becoming uncomfortably warm, then hot, then nearly unbearable. Sweat poured down Taiho's face and body. His throat felt dry and his eyes stung. But instead of panicking, Taiho slowed his breathing and movements. He had once participated in a gaming marathon in the middle of summer when the air conditioning broke down. The entire tournament had continued in sweltering heat for hours. He had won that tournament by staying calm while his opponents grew frustrated and made mistakes. "His core temperature is elevated but stable," Sunmi reported with surprise. "He's regulating his breathing to reduce water loss." "Enough," Dosan said after 15 minutes of extreme heat produced no breakdown. "Proceed to the obstacle course." The temperature returned to normal. Parts of the arena floor began to move, rising to form platforms of different heights. Some sections retracted entirely, revealing deep pits. From the ceiling, various obstacles descended, swinging pendulums, spinning barriers, walls with small openings. "This course was designed for species with 6 limbs," Kite explained to his colleagues. "No biped should be able to navigate it efficiently." Taiho studied the moving obstacles with keen interest. The entire setup reminded him of the bonus levels in Ultimate Ninja Warrior, a game he had mastered years ago. Those levels required perfect timing and spatial awareness. "Begin when ready," Sunmi instructed. Taking a deep breath, Taiho launched himself into the obstacle course. He leaped onto the first platform just as it reached its highest point, then quickly jumped to the next as a pendulum swung past. He rolled under a spinning barrier, his body barely clearing it. What the aliens didn't understand was that years of gaming had given Taiho incredible hand-eye coordination and spatial awareness. Though he wasn't particularly strong or fast for a human, his brain could process movement patterns with remarkable speed. "Look at his timing," Sunmi said, unable to hide her amazement. "He's predicting the obstacles perfectly. He's using momentum to compensate for physical limitations," Kite added. Taiho continued through the course, treating each section like a level in a platform game. When he reached a wall with openings too small for his body, he analyzed the pattern of their movement and found that every 30 seconds, 2 adjacent openings aligned in a way that would allow him to pass through. He waited for the precise moment, then slipped through the temporary gap, continuing his progress. Dosan's expression darkened. "Initiate the combat drone." From a hidden compartment in the wall, a metallic sphere about the size of a basketball emerged. It hovered in the air, then suddenly sprouted 4 sharp blade-like appendages. Its surface glowed with a faint blue light. The drone is programmed to cause pain but avoid permanent damage, Kaite explained. It's faster and stronger than any human. Taeho had just completed the obstacle course when he noticed the drone approaching. It moved erratically, darting from side to side in a way designed to be unpredictable. Final level. Boss fight, Taeho whispered to himself, a small smile forming despite his exhaustion. The drone lunged suddenly, one of its blades grazing Taeho's arm. He felt a sharp sting and saw a thin line of blood appear. The pain was real, not simulated like in the earlier tests. First blood to the drone, Dosan noted with satisfaction, but Taeho didn't panic. He began to move around the arena, watching the drone carefully. After its first attack, the drone pulled back, circled, then attacked again. Taeho dodged this time, having anticipated the movement. He's studying its attack patterns, Sunmi realized. All programs have patterns, Taeho thought as he continued to observe the drone's movements. Even random behaviors are generated by algorithms. The drone attacked again and again. Sometimes Taeho dodged successfully, other times he received painful cuts. But with each encounter, he learned more about how the drone operated. After several minutes, Taeho had identified 3 distinct attack patterns. The drone alternated between them in a sequence that seemed random but wasn't. There was a pattern to which attack it would use next. "Now I've got you," Taeho said, his breathing heavy but his eyes focused. The next time the drone attacked, Taeho was ready. Instead of dodging backward, he moved slightly to the side and then forward, into the drone's path but just beyond the reach of its blades. As the drone passed him, he grabbed one of its appendages. The drone tried to pull away, but Taeho held tight, using the drone's own momentum to swing it toward the wall. He let go at precisely the right moment, sending the drone crashing into the hard surface. Before it could recover, Taeho ran to one of the obstacle course platforms that had risen from the floor. He jumped onto it, timing his leap perfectly, so that when the drone came after him, it flew directly into the path of a swinging pendulum. The impact damaged one of the drone's stabilizers. It could still fly, but now it listed to one side, its movements less precise. "He's using the environment against our technology," Kite said in disbelief. Taeho continued his strategy, luring the damaged drone toward different obstacles. Each impact caused more damage until finally, the drone crashed to the floor, its lights flickering and its movements weak and uncoordinated. Taeho approached it cautiously. The drone made one last feeble attempt to attack, its blades extending weakly. Taeho simply stepped on the main body, pinning it to the ground until it went completely dark. Standing over the defeated drone, Taeho looked up at the observation window. Despite the cuts and bruises covering his body, despite his exhaustion, he was smiling. "Game over," he called out. "I win." The 3 aliens stared in silence. Finally, Dosan spoke. "This is unprecedented. He has completed trials that would break most sentient species." "What do we do now?" Kite asked. Dosan considered for a moment. "I believe it is time to speak with this human directly. He has earned that much." "And his species?" Sunmi inquired. "Based on this specimen, humans may be more valuable as allies than we initially believed," Dosan replied. "Their ability to adapt, to find patterns in chaos, to transform suffering into challenge, these are rare traits in the galaxy." As the arena powered down, Taeho sat on one of the platforms, catching his breath. He had no idea what the aliens planned next, but he felt a strange sense of accomplishment. Whatever happened, he had faced their worst and overcome it. Just like the final level of the hardest game he had ever played. The doors to the arena slid open. Taeho stood up, wiping sweat from his forehead. His body ached from the cuts and bruises of the combat drone fight, but his mind was sharp and alert. He watched as the 3 aliens entered the room without any protective barriers between them for the first time. Captain Dosan approached first, followed by Kite and Sunmi. They moved with a strange grace, their tall blue bodies seeming almost to float across the floor. "Human Taeho," Dosan said formally. "You have completed all our assessment trials. Your performance was unexpected." Taeho grinned. Thanks. Did I break the high score? The aliens looked at each other, confusion evident in their large eyes. You understand these tests were designed to cause suffering, Sunmi said. They were not meant to be enjoyable. Of course I knew that, Taeho replied with a shrug. But where I come from we have a saying, if you can't avoid it, enjoy it. I decided to treat it like a game instead of torture. Kite stepped forward, his head tilted in curiosity. Is this a common human trait? This ability to transform suffering into challenge? Taeho thought for a moment. More common than you might think. Humans play games that simulate war, disaster, even death. We create challenges for ourselves on purpose. We climb mountains just because they're there. We run long distances just to see if we can. Some people even pay money to be scared in haunted houses or thrilled on dangerous rides. Fascinating, Sunmi said, making notes on a floating screen. Your entertainment is our torture. Your training is our punishment. And your assessment was just another Tuesday night for me. Taeho laughed, then winced as the movement aggravated one of his cuts. Dosan noticed this and made a gesture. A small device floated toward Taeho and hovered near his wounds. A soft, blue light emanated from it, and Taeho felt a cool sensation as his cuts began to heal rapidly. Thank you, Taeho said, surprised by the gesture. It is the least we can do, Dosan replied. You have earned our respect, human Taeho. The alien captain began to pace slowly around the arena. When we first captured you, our intention was to determine whether humans would make suitable subjects, allies, or if they represented a threat to the Kuldar Imperium. And what did you decide? Taeho asked. None of the above, Dosan said. You have demonstrated abilities that suggest humans occupy a unique place in the galaxy. Kite continued the explanation. Most species we encounter fall into clear categories. Some are physically powerful but lack adaptability. Others have advanced technology but crumble under pressure. Some are naturally intelligent but fear-driven. Humans appear to be different, Sunmi added. Your physical bodies are unremarkable. Your technology is primitive. But your minds are extraordinary, Dosan finished. The ability to find patterns in chaos, to adapt to any situation, to transform suffering into motivation. These are rare traits. Taeho listened, with growing interest. The idea that aliens had been studying humanity made sense. Earth had always wondered if they were alone in the universe. Apparently, the universe had been wondering about them too. So what happens now? Taeho asked. More tests? Or do I get to go home? The three aliens exchanged looks that seemed to contain an entire conversation. Finally, Dosan turned back to Taeho. We will return you to Earth, he said. But first, we wish to offer a proposal to take to your leaders. I'm not exactly on speaking terms with world leaders, Taeho pointed out. I'm just a gamer. Yet you represent what makes humans unique, Sunmi said. Who better to deliver our message? Kite stepped forward and held out a small device that looked somewhat like a wristwatch. This contains the details of our proposal. It will activate when the time is right. Taeho took the device cautiously. It was lightweight and cool to the touch. The surface showed symbols similar to those he had seen throughout the ship. What's the proposal? He asked. The Kuldar Imperium wishes to invite humanity to join the Galactic Council, Dosan explained. Not as subjects or even as equals, but as instructors. Instructors? Taeho repeated, surprised. Sunmi nodded. Many species in our galaxy have grown complacent. They rely on technology or natural advantages. They have forgotten how to adapt, how to overcome challenges through ingenuity and persistence. Humans, however, turn obstacles into opportunities, Kite added. This mindset could benefit the entire galaxy. Taeho couldn't help but laugh. So you kidnapped me, tortured me, and now you want humans to teach alien species how to… what? Think like gamers? Essentially, yes, Dosan replied, completely serious. The ability to see patterns, to remain calm under pressure, to transform fear into focus. These skills could prevent conflicts and solve problems across the galaxy. Taeho looked down at the device on his wrist, then back at the aliens. Why should I help you after what you did to me? A fair question, Dosan acknowledged. But consider this. We could have continued our assessment through more invasive means. We chose to stop and communicate instead, because we recognized something valuable in you. Furthermore, Sunmi added, this alliance would benefit Earth greatly. The technology and knowledge we could share would advance your civilization by centuries. Taeho thought about it. Despite everything he had been through, he couldn't deny feeling a strange sense of accomplishment. These aliens had thrown their worst at him, and he had overcome every challenge. There was something satisfying about that. Were you ever afraid? Kite asked suddenly, his large eyes studying Taeho intently. The question caught Taeho off guard. After a moment, he nodded. Of course I was afraid. But in gaming, fear is just another resource to manage. The trick isn't avoiding fear, it's using it to sharpen your focus. The alien seemed pleased with this answer. We will return you now, Dosan said. The device will guide you when the time comes to share our proposal. Will I remember all this? Taeho asked. Or will you wipe my memory or something? Your memories will remain intact, Sunmi assured him, though you may find that many will not believe your account. That's okay, Taeho said with a smile. I'm used to people not believing me when I tell them I've beaten impossible games. The aliens led him to a small chamber that glowed with soft light. Before entering, Taeho turned to them one last time. This was the most challenging game I've ever played, he said. If you ever want a rematch, I'll be ready. Dosan made a gesture that might have been the alien equivalent of a smile. We would expect nothing less from you, human Taeho. A bright light enveloped Taeho, and he felt the same floating sensation he had experienced during his abduction. When he opened his eyes again, he was standing on the exact same street corner where he had been taken. He checked his watch. Remarkably, only a few hours had passed. The device on his wrist now looked like an ordinary gaming watch, but with one message displayed on its screen. Ready for multiplayer? Taeho smiled as he continued his walk home. He had no idea if anyone would believe his story, or if the aliens would actually contact him again. But one thing was certain. He had faced the ultimate challenge and emerged victorious. And for a gamer like him, there was no greater achievement than that.